So I remember as a college student, I was sitting at a bus stop, waiting to go visit my family on some occasion, and I was sitting across the way from these people that I had befriended. It was a woman and her daughter, and this woman had, you know, she told me about her life and her life story. That's how long we were there. We were there for kind of a while, maybe like an hour. And she had a very sad story. She had a story about her, things that her father did to her, and about how she had children out of, being forced to have them from family members who had did horrible things to her, and how she was grateful for her children, which changed my perspective on abortion. That was the first time I actually was confronted with abortion. Um, Certain types of facts about it. Well, anyway, um, and she just had this very sad story. The story about being her family. Being born a person whose mother was addicted to crack, and she was born into that, and about a victory in her life. And I remember just being taken by her, you know, her testimony, and her daughter sitting right there. It was pretty incredible. But I remember she gave me the opportunity to tell her my story, and I realized it hit me like a ton of bricks as she asked me, I don't have a sad story. I have a very, and I'm not saying that's like a bad thing or a good thing. What I'm saying is, she didn't believe me. She actually didn't believe me. I spent the next 2.5 hours going down to the Twin Cities, listening to her talk to her daughter about what kind of denial you got to be in to not even have one sad thing to say, about your life. Everybody suffers. And I think it was coming from a good place, and she was a Christian, of course. And she just said, everybody suffers heartache and sorrow, and I don't know where you have to be in your life not to admit that these things hurt you, or that you've been hurt. Maybe it means I have some type of, I don't know, personality disorder or some type of emotional disorder, but I personally don't think so. And secondly, uh, my story isn't sad. I'm a kid who was a military brat. That's what they called us, and it's not really a bad thing. It's kind of just what we're called. And I was baptized into Catholicism from, being an infant. And so I guess I can actually testify because I have a certificate saying that I've been a Christian since for 37 years. I've been a Christian on record. So that's because I come from a good home, because I have a father who's always been there. Even when he wasn't in my home, he made sure that every year we got a box full of beautiful things, beautiful clothes, and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, we always got to visit him, and we always felt wanted in his home. And his, marriage was an extension of our family. We have great, stepsisters and great, nieces from them, and nephews from them. Really beautiful family. My father's Colombian, my mother is Irish and Dutch and Czechoslovakian, and she, mixed like everybody else in our country. And she had she has a great family. She's got a family with a lot of people who married people just like she did outside of, the classic, I guess you could say, Caucasian family. And so I have a family with people who are mixed with Hispanic, mixed with African American, mixed with Italian and Irish. And so I don't have, any type of, I think a lot of people get sheltered within whatever race they're in, but I didn't have that. And so I've always felt very grateful for that. Even since I was like 10 years old, I felt very grateful for being in a family that looked so different than everybody else's and was so much more unique. And I've always felt extremely loved, like even when I was going through and giving my family a really hard time through my teenage years, which was self-inflicted. I knew I could call any one of my many aunts or uncles on any side of my family, and I could have a home somewhere, anywhere, and just like, my family members know that, if my niece or my nephew want to visit or need anything, or my cousins need anything, they can always call me and come and live with me. It's just the way we've always been. We've just always leaned on each other. So we've never really, at least I've never felt the need to lean on the church, because I've always had such a good community, and I'm grateful for it. So I've attended one funeral that I can remember, maybe two, and most of the people who've had cancer in my life, they've survived it several times over. I can't remember like ever really being truly heartbroken over a death that seemed out of line, you know? Like usually it's because they were older. We knew they were going to go because they had cancer, or sometimes they take us off guard a bit, you know, but we a lot of people have very devastating stories. And you know, I had a home in Tennessee where my grandparents lived. They invested in this property, 120 or 150, some odd acres of land. They owned a mountain behind them and like 7 fields. And so in Tennessee they have blackberry bushes, just like in Minnesota. Blackberry bushes are very common there. So I remember spending, you know, late summers, autumn, picking blackberries, huge blackberries, so my grandmother could make blackberry cobbler pie. I remember feeding the cattle. I remember enjoying spending summers, you know, mowing the many lawns that they had, because we had to, you know, peel back some of the forestation in order to allow the cattle to roam free. So I didn't mind a good hard day's work. It taught me to love work. It taught me to sweat. It taught me to work hard. I did that with my sister. I remember fishing, and you know, they had 2 ponds, fishing for catfish, and you know, having catfish competitions with my cousins, and many sleepovers, and it was just my childhood was very good. You know, we've had a few, you know, sad things that have happened that have devastated, you know, separated family members and so forth. But it was kind of like we did it to ourselves. It wasn't like something came out of the blue and decided to get us or something. You know, I could tell you so many more times that I can remember on record. My family members get into really bad car accidents and walking away. Like 2 years ago, my sister, who now has a daughter, my niece, she wouldn't be alive to have her. She shouldn't be, actually. My daughter shouldn't be either. They were on their way to Comic Con and they got into an accident with a semi truck, and they walked away. You know, I could tell you many of these type of stories, and we know not everybody does. So I don't know. I'm not trying to. I don't think you need a sob story. Is my point. I think God has been very good and gracious, and my loss, you know, my being lost, being an atheist, had a lot more to do with me, and had very little to do with my upbringing, because my sisters were. Um, we had family friends who went on to be priests, and we used to go to the Catholic Church, St. Paul Cathedral in St. Paul, Minnesota. They were in the choir there. We have funny stories about the stuff they used to do while they were in choir. And I have a good family. I have a very good family of a lot of attorneys and a lot of teachers and a lot of educated people who sat around tables and had very in-depth conversations about serious things, and that's what we enjoyed doing when we gathered together. We argued sometimes, but like what I'm trying to say is, I you know, I could pinpoint different things, different people and situations in my life that I think I could say damaged me or made me, you know, made my life a bit harder. You know, of course, every family or life has a villain. But as you know, I've become more and more deeper with the Holy Spirit and with prayer, and I've seen more of me in those people. You know what I mean? They're no longer villainous, because I realize we're all capable of falling short. And as much as I could look at people and I could tell really sad stories, I have a few, but it's really hard to, because I know that, like with my sisters, for example, there's a lot of good things I've done for my sisters. I've done a lot of good things for them, but I think sometimes they remember me for the times I fell short only, and it was a few times. And I can't say I was perfect as a teenager. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact I wasn't. I stole cars. I lied. I stole. I cheated. I did everything short of murder, and if it were up to me, I would have. I remember practicing witchcraft with friends in woods. I did horrible things. I was not a good person, that's my point. And I could always point it to somebody in my home at the time, or, you know, feeling forgotten. And I thought, well, if I do my testimony, I could tell you about the times I cursed God, you know, while kneeling next to a dog that was dying due to animal abuse. But what does that do for me to have to explain how that occurred? It does nothing for me, because I was capable of doing so much worse, and at the time I did. And it wasn't because I hurt animals, because I don't, and I never did. But what I'm saying is, I wouldn't have traveled the world. I wouldn't have seen Germany. I wouldn't have been in France. I wouldn't have gone to Euro Disney. I've gone to almost every amusement park in the United States of America, um, because I have a family that was invested in just doing stuff and going places. And I've lived all over the United States because I was a military kid. But I wouldn't have been if the people that you like to look at in your life and say, oh, my life was harder because they were in it. Well, my life wouldn't have had all the other benefits either. So it's easy to do that stuff. It's easy to talk about divorce and remarriage and get caught up in those things. But I think as you get older, you realize people are just people, and I'm just a person too. So it doesn't do me or anybody else any good to talk about the few times that they fell short, because I don't want to be remembered for that. So anyhow, my testimony is God is good to save. That's my testimony. My testimony is, I've been officially a Christian for maybe like 17 years. It's very, I don't know how to tell it, because I've changed and evolved so much every single year. The Christian I was many years ago, where I served for the sake of being seen, or I served because I knew I should have, or I did things for all the wrong reasons, confessing for all the wrong reasons over and over again, trying to count sins like I could. I was a different kind of Christian. I'm an evolved type. And so it's taken many, many years. And for the first time, this is the first year, and I know it's a tough year for many people, but this is really a first year that I felt most empowered. I feel most empowered this year. This year I feel like the Holy Spirit, finally I can ask it, and I know it will be given. I have an expectation now. I reach out expecting to receive. It's the first year. That to me is more greater than, it's not really like my own power. It doesn't feel like I'm powerful. It doesn't really give me all the control I want or I need, any more than you need a good parent to listen to everything you want and need. Like if you control your parent, you'll be eating ice cream and cake every day, right? Well, that's not what you need. So when I have the Father over me, and I'm able to pray to Christ and know that I'm heard, I know the right things are going to be done. Even if it feels like discipline, even if it feels like like condemnation sometimes, I know it's because it's good for me. So this is the first year I'm walking very comfortably within. I feel very comfortable in my own skin for the first time as a Christian. I feel comfortable wielding the Holy Spirit. I feel comfortable with prayers. I feel comfortable being able to see and look and understand and accept that what is because I asked. So specific things in my life. So, I feel like the Christian journey is a long one. It takes many years, and I'm very grateful to a God who has given me the opportunity, especially in these times. I have felt such an abundant peace of late. I literally can't keep my eyes open. I'm so peaceful. I can't keep my eyes open because I'm falling asleep everywhere. I don't know why either. I feel a bit of like a soreness in my body, but I think it's because I'm sleeping a lot. I don't know what's going on with me. But I'm trying to, I think, I think emotionally, the last few months has been a bit rocky, and I know my home right now is suffering a bit of spiritual warfare, and that's, I guess, part of the testimony. I was going to go on record with it. I don't know. Some Christians are funny about it, but I know that I've suffered with spiritual warfare for many years, and if you share a bed with me, like my sisters have, or my husband, when I say you, I mean like family, as family do. We sleep next to each other when it's during sleepovers and stuff. You're probably gonna have sleep paralysis, or you're gonna wake up with all kinds of nonsense happening, and it's just like clockwork. I have a sister who came over to my place, and she suffered such spiritual warfare, she stopped sleeping for 2 days because she was so afraid to sleep. She went home and brought ever what it was with her, because her boyfriend was like, who's an atheist, was like, yeah, like, I had really bad nightmares when she got home. I had nightmares of her being pulled under the bed and all kinds of horrible things. And we had alarms go off when my sister would sleep over. We had door alarms go off exactly 3:30 in the morning. Then she would suffer severe sleep paralysis for hours on end. She hated that I worked overnights because she was home alone. it's just my husband saying he's had issues with this. I've had a person in my life who accesses the spiritual world in the past. They're not in my life anymore. They access the spiritual world illegally, and they told me that I have something that's a person who's bald that follows me. And I thought, okay, well, whatever. And of course, it's reported by my husband. He's like, yeah, there's like some bald guy. Like when I walked into the room, there was some bald guy laying next to you. You were on your stomach, and he was on his stomach, and but he was half asleep, and so he said he could have swore he saw it. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, first of all, the spiritual world is real, and if you have any doubts, I dare you to come over. I dare you, because there's been a lot of people in my life who have a lot of doubts and who feel very like confident in their version of their world, who are totally shaken when they share a bed with me, totally shaken. And I don't know why that is, but it seems like when I go really unconscious, things happen. I've had family members report my lights will go out like in the middle of the night, and when I wake up, right before I wake up, they'll turn back on. I've had all kinds of things, so what I'm saying is spiritual warfare is real. I've been highly empowered by people like Pastor Tora Grace, who have taught me, and John Ramirez, I think his name is. He's an evangelical guy who used to be an ex-atheist, and he has his own way of preaching. And I think mostly it's his testimony. He gives his testimony over and over again, which is amazing. And he taught me a bit about that, and that you can take that power, and you can, it's like, and in my home I have to, because I usually don't experience these things, not anymore, but the more oblivious I become to it, the more obvious it becomes to other people, because it's almost like now it doesn't bother me, but it starts to bother other people. And so it makes me realize, like, because I think people feel fear, like maybe, like you think you're crazy, so you don't want to like tell people, but like I never wanted to repeat the whole bald-headed guy thing. I thought that was a little weird. So I was like, oh, whatever. But it scared me when my husband said that. That really frightened me. I was like, yeah, I've been told that. That's crazy. So what do? I pray very boldly in the spirit now, and it's where I'm most comfortable. I've been listening to the prayers of the saints. I'm not Catholic, but I was just out of curiosity, just seeing how maybe on record, the only place you can find saint prayers on record is through like Saint Padre Pio and all kinds of saints. And I was listening to their prayers, and what strikes me is their prayers are not very bold. It seems very like passive, almost like, well, your will be done on earth as is in heaven, which is totally my thing too, but it just seems like, let me stay within your grace, let me stay within your will, let me stay within your power, let me stay within your glory, please always overlook me, or not overlook me, but oversee me, like watch over me. And I just think it's interesting, because I've been so thirsty for trying to figure out how to take all this energy in the spirit, and I think it might be a gift, and push it outward in a way that's efficient, because otherwise it just kind of gets pent up, and it makes me feel kind of like lethargic, or like I'm not acting in my truest potential. So since I've done a lot of spiritual warfare prayers, which I do nightly, I do it daily. I like every day. Like if there's something happening in the store, like I will be walking in a store, no joke, and I will feel like, somebody's like watching me, or somebody's in the aisle with me too much, or they're coming too close to me, or whatever. And sometimes people can creep you out. Like, like I don't know if it's like a smell, or like, but they will just creep me out for some reason. They'll just really strike me as strange, and I'll just give it silently a spiritual warfare prayer, and I feel better, because I feel like maybe I'm helping spiritually to see that person what they need, give them what they need through Christ, through Yeshua, because maybe there's something attached to them, like I have things attached to me that other people tell me about that I haven't seen in many years or understood, or so so I give that same thing to them, where it's like, well, I need it, maybe they need it too, maybe that's why I feel this way, so and maybe it's a gift, maybe it's one of my gifts, and again, I'm starting to get comfortable with the fact that I know I'm made just like everybody else is, to have talents and gifts, and I need to be using them to my fullest potential because it's what God made me for, It's a little bit like being a battery that chooses not to charge people. It's like, no, I want to keep charge. I want to keep my own charge. You keep being without any energy. I want to keep the whole charge to myself. Well, that's kind of selfish. That's bearing the talents. So, for example, we suffered spiritual warfare in where we used to live. And I remember this is kind of like what's starting to happen now, which never really happened. It happened one time before. We went to the Catholic Church because we were Catholic at the time. And I guess the one negative thing that we do have, I guess, that I have had, that my husband hasn't, and my child is starting to learn how it feels, is I've never really been embedded in a community, so I've always had this kind of knee-jerk reaction to go back to the Catholic Church, which, by the way, unlike like the local churches that have like the I guess Nazarene, the Baptist, and all the other churches, they know who's supposed to be there. The Catholic Church, the agenda is to get in there, do your prayer without talking or looking at as few of people as possible. You kind of want to get out of there hoping the priest doesn't even notice you, and then you leave. And boy, that's the greatest. I loved that. But that seems to be, and I remember going into new churches and feeling bothered because I had to actually socialize. I know it sounds so horrible, but it's so mean. But it always, because I've never had a community, so I don't know what it is to click within a community. And I think it's something God's really trying to work with me with. Like, he's like, you need to fellowship for real. And I don't know how to do it. So I do it online all the time and stuff, but it's not the same. And I have a few friends in my community that I worked with when I was a crossing guard, but it's kind of different, I think. Anyhow, so being a military kid, I didn't get to find much of a community, but I really love the idea of being able to run to a Catholic church because the doors are always open, unlike most other churches, and it's always unlocked and it's always empty if the church service isn't in. And so I'd run in there with my family, and we did this spiritual prayer. It was more like as a victim instead of as a victor. I was a victim instead of a victor. And I remember saying, we're surrounded by wolves. We need help. We need you, Yeshua. We really we need you. I remember crying. My husband cried. We felt very vulnerable because there was a lot of, not just spiritual warfare, but there was a lot of other things happening. And I remember leaving the church. And this is the first time things happened in real time where I realized prayer isn't in vain. This is the first time. We were walking out of the church, and I felt just so in despair. I left that church, and I felt no peace. I left that church, and I felt like, I don't even think I want to do this anymore. Like, I don't know where to find somebody in the church if I wanted to. Like, I can't walk around the hallways because the priests stay in a different area of the church. I can't find them anywhere. Like, this is an empty building where no other soul is in but me. And I can't even beg a priest for anything because they're not around. I can't find them, and I remember feeling so alone. And I remember going over to the corner to cross the street, and a car pulled up very quickly. I'm telling like and stopped right in front of us, and I looked in, and sure enough, it was Father Eli. And I remember thinking, you have got to be kidding me. Like, Father Eli pulled up, and there he was. And I remember thinking, this is incredible. And so I was talking to him, and I asked him for prayer, and I remember telling him, we just really need a lot of spiritual guidance. We need a lot of spiritual help. We need our child to be baptized, because I wanted her to be older to choose to be baptized, and she was actually recently baptized April 8th. But at the time, I just, being Catholic, I knew I was well past due, but I'm not anymore. And so I remember thinking, I remember asking Father Eli, let's make arrangements to baptize my kid. And the reason why I was asking, because I lacked faith. I felt like, I don't know how much longer we can survive these people, this gang stalking, this whoever they are and whatever they're doing. I don't think we can survive this much longer. I don't think we can do this anymore. And I really do feel like we were spiritually like moved in on by some type of cabal where I was living, some type of spiritual people who understand a different side of the spectrum, because we felt very spiritually under attack, and it was a lot more intense than usual. And this is like again around the time we had door alarms going off at 3:30 in the morning. This is around that time. Those were really manifestations. I had a grandfather clock that would stop ticking all day, but would go off at 3:30 in the morning only, and it was really loud. And every time it ticked, it sounded broken. And so we finally just turned it off. But yeah, we were just suffering such spiritual nightmares, and we felt like we just couldn't shake it. So, but that was the first time I ever felt like so deep in despair, and it was completely answered within a moment or two. I remember thinking, well, I could deal with that. I could, really, if that's the way things were answered, I could live like this. This is how I could live. Like, everything else is unbearable. But if I could ask and actually receive and not feel like it's going to the wind, even though I know God is real, but then I acted in complete lack of faith. I wanted to baptize my kid because I didn't think she'd survive what was happening. Like, how horrible is that? Um, and I think that's really a big deal. I think if you lack faith, which of course is biblical, you cannot please God. If you lack faith, you cannot please Him. So instead of acting out of protection of self and acting out of, how do we preserve us, the energy needed to go outward, and I guess what I've learned is when you start to serve through the Spirit, through prayer, through your community. We do serve our community here. Literally, if you need anything, like we have a few guys in the neighborhood who are homeless, and they know us and we know them, and we'll sit and we'll fellowship with them regularly. And they actually do tell us which churches are really good, and we do visit them because they're, we're church hopping, but now they're closed. But I remember, and that is the most fulfilling fellowship I've had. When you're either out talking about Jesus, like there's this one time I was on the line and a guy cut in front of me, and this lady saw that he had cut in front of me, and she got really angry and got into his face about it, and they were having a spat. So bad, in fact, the security person who was waiting, because we had to wait like in line because only so many people were in the building or allowed in the building because of coronavirus, the security guard actually went in because she didn't want to have to deal with these people who were fighting, but they were there to stop that kind of stuff, but they hid from it. They actually hid from that conflict because they didn't want to deal with it. And this lady and this guy, and all of a sudden they started cussing and cursing and started getting ugly. And I turned to the guy. The guy said, "You're okay, right? You don't care that I cut in front of you, do you?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't care." And then the lady was like, yeah, she's afraid. Of course she doesn't care if you cut in front of her. You're, nasty or this and that and the other thing. And he's kind of smiled and kind of like whatever. And so, I said to him, "Do you know Jesus as Lord and Savior?" And he got real funny all of a sudden. And he actually, like, after we started talking for a little bit about what churches he goes to and stuff, and what churches I've been to locally, he actually got in the back of the line. Because, and I find that, like, you can do a lot more. I don't think it's damage. I think it's more like, I really felt like there's something going on in a person when they feel entitled to do stuff like that. And secondly, it's like, we're all people. Like, what does this do to fight people? Like, we're not all equal here. Like, I don't understand what this serves, and cussing and cursing and getting angry and into people's face doesn't really serve anything either. But, I found when I take that energy that other people are using anyway, I could take half that energy, and the purpose is served, because not only does he get testimony, and then he's realized, okay, in context, this doesn't make any sense, right? Because there's a bigger plan here. But then he kind of gets to find his own place in the universe, and I don't have to tell him what to do, right? So this is a very small example of how when you push this energy outward, through using that spiritual warfare is one way I got to put that energy outward. Knowing, what faces locally I can fellowship with at any given moment at a hot drop of a hat. And instead of using it toward my old school weapon, which was anger, instead now it becomes grace, right? So I'm finding that now I can, like I said, I'm more comfortable in my own skin as a Christian. I know my place. And when you have a ability to submit, and you have the ability to find a place of inside of humbleness. I'm not always humble, but I can be. I'm capable of being humble. Um, all of a sudden, the battle is different. The battle changes. The battleground is no longer so coarse, because you're not just fighting. Sometimes you're not really fighting other people, you're fighting yourself. And so the battle is no more. And I find, just like when we went to that church, we prayed desperately, desperately praying, and I left going, wow, I feel like I just tossed it to the wind. I feel like, I don't think that we're going to get resolved. I feel like this thing is so big, it will eat us alive. And to see Father Eli pull up like that was like, man, first of all, there are priests who do have the Holy Spirit. I know that for a fact. I can tell he was on a mission to get to that corner. I could feel it, because the Holy Spirit confirmed it. He's like, he's here for you. Secondly, yeah, and again, I'm not advocating for the Catholic Church. I can't tell you I agree with everything they do. I don't. And I know they have a huge underbelly that I'm not trying to extinguish. And third and foremost, the soil is the Holy Spirit. The soil is the truth of it's Jesus Christ. It's repentance. It's humility. So, I don't know. What I'm trying to say here is, I don't have a sob story. I have a battle that I've just recently learned how to maneuver and move within. And if I can only get my energy up a little bit, I think that, and through prayer and through, of course, studying the Word as we do, I think this is just the beginning of something very big for me. I'm growing to be so much stronger as a Christian. So a lot of people's testimony is, I was lost, and now I'm found, and that is true for me. But now I'm not just lost and I am found. I am moving and wielding and battling and fighting within the Spirit in a way, in an empowered way, where I feel bolder. I feel very bold as a Christian. I don't feel, there's something, isn't that weird that you can be humble and feel a type of boldness that is fiercer than anything? That it's not even a confidence or an overconfidence, it's something else. It's what can be against you when God is for you type of feeling. Like, I'm here to do the job and to serve a mighty God. And as I'm serving that mighty God, that must mean I must be within His will, because to serve means you have to be given the order, given the task. And so if you're given the order and given the task, and if you're serving, it's really hard to take the energy and pull it inward if it's going outward. And if the energy is going outward, it's hard for anything to get in, because you're too busy staying in motion spiritually. So, that's my testimony, is that I've recently learned how to move more efficiently as a Christian in the Spirit. And thank you for listening. This is Linda of Christ is King Forever.